Are we in, baby? Are we in, baby? Baby, baby. I don't think I need the headphones. What do you think? Should I rock the headphones? I have no headphones. I'm gonna rock no headphones. Your boy don't need it. Yeah. Hell yeah, son. Hell yeah. I'm excited. Just had a cup of coffee, smoked a little weed. I got some jiujitsu practice in about an hour. I'm gonna train. I got a lot of drilling today. We're gonna lift some weights. Oh, it feels good, man. I'm feeling the vibes. I'm feeling the positive energy coming my way. I wanted to talk about some things that have recently come up. So I made a post on social media, Facebook, Instagram, mostly Facebook. Got a lot of traction, a lot of people commenting, a lot of people messaging me, talking about and asking questions because on the post, I made a transformation photo where I talked about how I quit pornography, I quit RuneScape after doing these things for many, many hours in a day. And I started getting more hooked onto jiu-jitsu, self-improvement, health and fitness. I lost a lot of weight. And because of all these like interesting topics that came on where we talk about like Nofap, RuneScape, I wanted to actually just talk about it a little bit more. So if anybody is, people who ask me questions, I can just send them this link and it would be a lot easier to, I hope to, I would hope that for topics like these that are as serious as these, it's very hard to just go back and forth in a message and just explain everything, right? I'm very blessed that a lot of people are messaging me. I'm very grateful because this is really important to me. Is NoFap and the whole video game addiction, self improvement. I really want to see more people doing that, especially people in the jiu-jitsu community, because I think jiu-jitsu is just like that one little extra step. Like people that do jiu-jitsu are different than a lot of other people, but I think that there are a lot of people in the jiu-jitsu community that suffer with things like anxiety, depression, kind of not having a path in life, and jujitsu is like that one thing that they really really love. And if that's the case, I think it's amazing that you should just double down on it and really take your passion to the next level. So with the transformation, was I'll kind of just I want to talk about NoFap first. So whew, it's tough to talk about. There's definitely a lot to unfold. The questions that I usually get asked is, what does it do? Well, let me first explain what NoFap is. NoFap is no PMO, so no porn, masturbation, or orgasm. Now, I will say this. I think sex is fine. I do think it should be monitored, though. I think that people think that sex isn't like a big deal, but there's an energy that comes with retaining your seed as a male, especially. I think with women too, there can be a little bit of something, but there's a power and a discipline and a dedication that comes with refraining and giving yourself time away from sexual pleasure. I think that this can also be very powerful for improving relationships as well, for especially guys. So it's reframing from those things. Now, a lot of people think that it's utter nonsense and that it's not important. And if you say that, I say to you that you're addicted to porn. It's straight up like that. If letting go of porn or quitting masturbation scares you that much, you're addicted. And I challenge you to try to go 30 days without it, 7 to 30 days, and see what happens. At first, it's very difficult. Your first one, two, even like first 30 days, it's fucking hard, man. And like figuratively and literally, like you're going to be hard. But eventually, you start to become more in control of it. The thing is that you have to do it no fap, because I see a lot of people, they try it and then they don't really do much with it, is that there's a sexual transmutation of energy. So you are getting all this excess energy coming into basically your balls, and what happens is it makes your instincts increase. So we have these natural inclinations to reproduce. So when our seat is empty, we kind of just lay back, we relax, we're in a lower level of consciousness. But when we have that semen retention and we reframe, especially from things like porn and masturbation, those things are absolutely terrible for you. It rewires your entire brain and it ruins your dopamine receptors and it brings you to a lower level of consciousness. When you have that semen retention, you have to know how to transmute that energy, bring it up, raise your conscious awareness. You start to do more things that are positive for you. You start to have different type of anxiety triggers. So for instance, there's a lot of people that get stressed out, they get anxious or they get bored and they refrain and they start going towards like porn or masturbation. But instead, you can actually rewire your brain into thinking, well, if I'm stressed out or bored about something, then I can do something that's a little bit more productive. So for instance, like I have a little bit of free time this morning and I wanted to start this podcast. So I do this podcast rather than going to like watch porn or jerk off, right? That's kind of like the simple terms of it. I started it about 3.5 years ago. And the reason why I started it is because I was having PIED, which is porn-induced erectile dysfunction. So I was with a couple girlfriends at the time, and I wasn't getting it up. And it was a huge problem. Obviously, not having sex when you're trying to have sex is a problem, and the girls would think that they're ugly. It would just be a huge mess. And I started looking into it and researching, like, why is this happening? I even went to the doctor and I got my hormones checked out and they're like, it's fine. It's all in your head. And I started researching it and they were saying like, it's because you watch porn, it ruins your thinking as far as how sex goes and how relationships goes and the way that you look at people, because you're constantly just looking at sons and daughters just having sex with each other and you're thinking like you're involved in that act, but it's really not. It's a fantasy. It's tricking your brain into doing something or thinking that it has something that it doesn't actually have and that it probably will never achieve. So you're constantly giving your brain these floods of dopamine and these floods of fake pleasure that it's not real, like this fake fantasy. Your brain starts to think like it's in this fantasy land. And that's what I mean by having a reduced level of consciousness. So I started researching it and I found out that it was connected to pornography and masturbation. So I refrained from that. I refrained for it for a week and holy shit, I can't even tell you, like my boners were absolutely insane. And it's funny because I remember I did it and then I became this like sex crazed human being. And I was like, the girl I was dating at the time, I was like, let's have sex, let's have sex, let's have sex. And then she kind of got turned off by that. And I ended up doing some other like childish things that we're not going to get into. And then I didn't know how to harness that energy. So I had all this excess energy and I was really committed because I didn't want to have erectile dysfunction. Like if I was going to get with a girl, I actually wanted to have sex. So I started researching it more and I started to find out more about sexual transmutation and how we can focus our extra energy on things that improve ourselves. So I knew for me, I've always wanted to do martial arts. And I remember I've always wanted to learn like self-defense and I did karate when I was younger, but I didn't really like it because we were just going, everybody was kung fu fighting, kia, 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 kia. And then I remember like we would spar and I would try to go and strike with people and then I would try to grab them and they would yell at me for grappling. And I mean, I was like 8 years old and I just started crying because I wanted to grab them. I wanted to control them and they wouldn't let me do that because we were just doing like the kung fu or not. It wasn't kung fu, it was like karate, but the guys were definitely scammers. I don't think they were like real like black belts. So it was a little bit sketchy. So later down the line, when I started having this excess energy from the Nofap, I got into jiu-jitsu and I started doing jiu-jitsu like 2 to 3 times a week. And that opened up a whole new avenue of life for me. I started taking that excess energy and putting it into that. Now, mind you, I was already strength training. I was already working out and putting effort into health and fitness. So when I started doing jiu-jitsu, all of a sudden, I now had less time to focus on, oh, I'm on Nofap, right? And that's the big thing is that you can't think like I'm on Nofap. You have to you're changing your behavior. You're changing your habits. You have this routine where you regularly are watching pornography and you have to change your routine so that way you don't keep getting the same triggers. So you have to start doing other things. So let's say you're doing jiu-jitsu already. Maybe you need to start reading books. You need to start working on a business you've always wanted to work on or work on a creative passion like writing a book or painting or drawing, whatever it is that you do. You could put that into extra fitness activity, strength and conditioning, strength training, pain management, flexibility and stretching, community service. You start to just add in more positive things to your life. Then all of a sudden what happens is, as you do it more and more, your brain starts to get rewired. It starts to actually crave the dopamine that it gets from accomplishing tasks rather than just watching porn. You see, dopamine is a really interesting hormone. It's our reward system. It's what actually triggers us and gives us motivation. When we watch porn and we masturbate, it is the most stimulating form of dopamine that we can experience outside of things like methamphetamine or crack cocaine. And you can actually see scientific studies of this happening where they see these pleasure systems. And sometimes it's even more than some of these hardcore drugs. And that means it's more addicting. So instead of you craving, like, I want to open up and start a business, or I want to do better in jiu-jitsu, or I want to lift more weight and become stronger, or I want to improve my social skills so I can get a girlfriend, you instead are thinking about pornography, and that's where you're getting your dopamine from. So when you remove that dopamine source, there's this feeling of anxiety that happens, and you need to now replace that dopamine with something else. And dopamine comes from, if you do, let's say, like a jujitsu session, you're going to get hit with a sense of dopamine. That's what gets you. That's that happy feeling that you get after like a tough workout. That's that happy feeling you get after a close conversation with a friend or family, and you guys tell each other that you love each other. It's that feeling of reward that you get when you put through and go through a task that requires effort. So you can literally rewire your brain with Nofap. And that's kind of what happened to me. I remember I started personal training. I started helping more people. I got in better shape. I was already, I lost like 50 pounds before I even did Nofap, but I started getting in better shape. I started building more muscle because I had more energy for my workouts. I put more effort into it, and some people say that it's psychological, but it maybe it is partly placebo, but we already seen the scientific studies. You guys can do some research on your own that it is a proven thing to work. Now, a lot of people talk about, oh, how do I get past like the first week or two with anxiety? We have to understand that the anxiety is going to be there, and you have to understand that you need to start filling your day with other tasks. So if you're just like sitting around at the couch watching TV, you're going to get horny and you're going to want to watch porn. If you're going for a walk and listening to a productive podcast or audiobook, the chances of you actually watching porn is probably a lot lower, right? If you put yourself in a situation where you're going to watch more porn, then you're going to watch more porn. If you start putting yourself in situations where not watching porn is like, watching porn is like not even plausible, well, then you're probably not going to crave it as much. Now, you're obviously always going to get cravings. Like, I've been doing it for 3.5 years and I'm not perfect. Like, I've had relapses. I remember my longest streak was about 9 months. I was having sex though, but I wasn't watching porn. And then the girl and I broke up, and it went like a couple months without watching porn. And I winded up like binging, and I watched a lot, but I also learned a lot from that experience. And I learned a lot that I was running away from certain emotions, and I winded up just improving that by getting back onto Nofap. And it's kind of like with dieting, right? Or weight loss. Like, if you make a mistake, you miss a day of working out, maybe jujitsu, you miss a jujitsu session. Hey, you know what? It happens, and you get back on track, and you just get back to what you were doing. And that's kind of the idea with Nofap. So if you're going like a week and then you quit and you start watching it again, it's like, well, you got to just get back on track, and you got to just start doing it again. Try to go 2 weeks, then try to go 4 weeks, and keep trying to improve that over time. And you'll start to find that the way that your brain thinks really changes. It starts to actually crave these higher desires. It starts to crave fulfilling relationships. It starts to crave success, and your brain will start to think more in that direction of wanting success and wanting to work more and wanting to build relationships, because you're not so dopamine filled with the pornography. So I definitely think that you should definitely try it and go into it a little bit and explore it and see where your mind goes. Now, I also want to talk a little bit about RuneScape. Now, RuneScape was something that I played back when I was like it was all the way from like 11 years old to about 15 or 16 years old is when I eventually quit. So RuneScape was a big part of my life. I mean, I would literally play it like 8 hours a day. And the obsession came from my brothers playing it, and I started playing it too. And I wanted to get better at the game because they were really good at the game. I kind of like looked up at them as they played the game. They like created communities, and they were like actually playing the game like really good, and they were actually known in the game for it. So I was like, I gotta do something with this game. Like it was kind of just like my competitive nature. I wanted to be better than them. That was always like my thing. So I winded up, continuing to play RuneScape, and I want to talk about the lessons that I learned from RuneScape. So for those of you that don't know RuneScape, it's an MMORPG where you level up different skills and you have different tasks that you can do. Like you can go and train up for bosses, you can skill and level up your stats. You can do PvP, player killing, and that's what my big game was. I loved PvP. I loved player killing. And, for my first like 3 to 4 years of player killing, I kind of sucked at it. Like I really wasn't that good, and I would always lose. But for some reason, I just did not give up. I just didn't give up. And one day, all of a sudden, before I knew it, I had like 3 maxed out accounts. I had a maxed out main. I had a maxed out mid-level. I had a maxed out Zerk with like turmoil. If you guys are familiar with that, I would go on like 30 to 50 PvP kill streaks. I just would not die. I would kill people in like 5 seconds in the wilderness. I would play 9 hours a day. I had a 5 build bank. I had like strategic staking strategies that allowed me to keep making money without ever being clean. I had this like really interesting strategy. And I ended up getting rich, and I was just killing people. And I became like, people knew me on the game. Like I literally became like a fucking legend on the game. And it's nuts because that biggest lesson learned was there was like 4 years of failure before I even hit that pinnacle point of the point that I was actually craving. And it was like the best feeling in the world. And then what happened was there was an update to the game called the Evolution of Combat, where it changed the way that the game played. And I winded up not liking it. And then I stopped playing the game, and I winded up just saying, fuck this. And all of a sudden I had 9 to 10 hours a day. So I got a job. That's literally it. Like it was so funny because all that, what happened on RuneScape doesn't actually matter here in real life. And it's like, I put so much time and effort and energy into RuneScape, and it doesn't matter. But that lesson that I learned though was failure eventually you can lead to success if you learn from your mistakes and you learn from your losses and you continue moving forward. I mean, I think that's really an important aspect in jiu-jitsu. I think that's an important aspect in a lot of different things. And I'm really thankful that I learned that lesson. And I'll never forget those days of playing RuneScape where I would just eat pizza and mac and cheese and just play 8 to 9 hours a day. Now jiu-jitsu is my video game. So now this kind of ties into the obsession with leg locks, right? So I want to kind of like I want to backtrack a little bit to where I got started with leg locks. So I was at my first gym that I was training at, and I was training for about a year or so, and I was having a really hard time getting jiu-jitsu. It wasn't clicking. People that were like training for like half as much as me were like being better than me. I had a really hard time learning techniques. I felt like I had special ed in jiu-jitsu. Like I just didn't understand what to do. I tried, I remember like doing a competition. I got like tapped out in a minute and a half, and that was it. And then what happened was like maybe over the next few months or so, I started seeing this guy, Rob Deagle, who was just like leg locking everybody in the gym that I was training at. And he also started to have a private where he would teach some people. And I saw these kids starting the private, and the kids in the private and him were the top people in the jiu-jitsu gym. They would beat everybody, and you could see how fast they're progressing too. And it was fucking kick ass, man. It was sick to watch. And I was like, okay, I have to learn and I have to get better. Like I need to do something different because what I'm doing isn't working. So what ended up happening was I remember I was rolling with Rob one day, and he was like, hey, you should come to my privates. You should come to the group privates. And this was before he was well known. He had like 400 followers on Instagram. He really didn't have much competition success at that point. Well, he did. He was like, he won a lot of tournaments, but this was like right before he started doing like seminars and super fights and like really blowing up more in the community. So he charged me something like $20 for these privates where he was going over leg locks and back takes and stuff. And I remember I was like just mind blown. I was like in shock that there was like this whole other world of jiu-jitsu that I've never seen before. And it was about tying in like the upper body and lower body and having chains of offense and like really getting into like submission grappling for what it is. And I remember like he had an obsession over leg locks, and then I started kind of getting into it a little bit. And then as I started getting into it, I started to realize how powerful it was, because I started using leg locks on people that were beating me constantly. So I would use the leg locks on people, and all of a sudden I was like, holy shit, I feel like there's a cheat code. Like there's a cheat code. But what was also nice is that I was able to tie in those leg attacks with other offense to the upper body as well. And I started kind of going back and forth. So I was like, wait, I got to like study this more. And then over time, I started learning more from him. And I started also doing research on my own. I started doing like some other instructionals. I started looking up online, like who were people that are like top in the leg lock game. And then this is when I started getting into like training started training at Sarah's, where I met like Jason Rao, Nick Ronan, and obviously that whole gym from the Henzo Gracie line. I started to really see that. I started to see people that, you know, trained with like Gordon Ryan regularly, and they were doing all these leg locks. And I was like, holy shit, this is fucking cool, man. Like, I love how there's these people that are like just doing these leg locks, and it looks so, it's like fun. Like I just was like mind blown, because again, I thought it was like a cheat code to jujitsu. So I started getting into that. And, you know, now I'm doing all this research, and I love leg locks, man. I really do. But more importantly than my love for leg locks is I love the ability to chain my attacks together, right? I think that was like the big avenue it opened up. Like, I think we can get really stuck in one way of thinking. And this kind of helped me open up the box, because now I had all these different offensive strategies. They were a lot different than what the typical jiu-jitsu person would know. Now, of course, it gets really interesting when you roll with other people that are familiar with leg locks. And that's when it becomes like, when it's becomes so elaborate. And you have to look at how people are defending your attacks, and how you can chain together your attacks with either other leg locks or using that to pass or get the back. And it's just so interesting. Like, I'm a huge like nerd in that sense, where I love the elaborateness of jujitsu, how you have all these different angles. Like it actually kind of reminds me of when I was playing a lot of video games, when I was playing RuneScape. Like, there was these different skills you had to level up, and these different stats, and there were these different ways that you can go, and everybody had different ways of playing the game, and you picked your playing style and you kept going with it. Like, that obsession literally got dragged over to jujitsu. So I quit that video game, got into jujitsu, and that's where like now this is like my video game. Like I literally treat it like it's a project, like it's elaborate, and all these different avenues of offense. And it's just so interesting too. And it's so much fun because of the community around it. You know, you start meeting other people that maybe have similar games to you, or people that have completely different games as you, completely different backgrounds, different ages, different genders, different ways of living. And they just all get together, and we all have this common bond of jiu-jitsu. And it's also a lot of fun when I meet other people that are into leg locks as well, and we can have like leg lock battles. Those are a lot of fun. So that's where my obsession with leg locks go. Shout out Leg Locker. They're pretty cool. Yeah, so that's a lot of it to do with like the Nofap, RuneScape, and my obsession with leg locks. I kind of just wanted to chat about that. I was chatting about it with some other people, so I wanted to just kind of come on here and get my reps in with talking. This is episode 6. Very cool. Definitely going to keep watering this project here, and keep continuing to document what I'm thinking and doing, and how I can better myself in jiu-jitsu. Currently a white belt, even though I know all these leg locks, and this is my journey to getting to a black belt. So if you found this interesting, you found this enjoyable, you make sure you like and comment, as that really helps grow the channel and get the word out there, and subscribe for future videos. Other than that though, I'm going to end it here. Thanks a lot for listening, and peace out. Love you guys.